Eswatini Fair Trade, what we do is we work as a collective. One of the things that is important to understand for buyers is buyers are not buying one product. Buyers buy a range of products. So one of the reasons we've been doing so well with our buyers is we're able to offer them a range of products, and then we ship together as a collective. So I do want to always stress the importance of working as a group, especially when it comes to things like buyer tours. We are definitely stronger together. Next slide. So this is some of our achievements over the past few years. We work with 2,795 people. 97% of them are female. And one of the things I'm really happy with is because we're a fair trade network, you can see over the last few years that we've been able to help our members grow their sales by 49%. But that's got a direct correlation to wages of an increase of 47%. And that's the thing about fair trade is if your sales are going up, then we want to see that also your salaries and wages and benefits are going up. So over the last 4 years, we've been able to create 517 new jobs. And in the past year or so, we've added another 400 jobs to that record. So we're up to over 1,000 sustainable jobs. Next slide. These are some of the products we work with. We work with 83 members altogether. Some of them are involved in the home decor industry, as you can see here, these beautiful pieces. Next slide. Then we have the accessories and the jewelry. We have about 22 of our members that are involved in this particular area. Next slide. And then we have the agri-food, the value add. So not only are we growing vegetables, but then we're creating the sauces and the jams, etc. Next slide. So this is how we do it. We have training. We have 3 pillars. So we have training. We do in-class training, a homework implementation visit. We do on-site best practices. Again, we're sharing our knowledge. So for example, one of our members who's really, really good at packing, we will go to their workshop and they will train other people in how to pack or how to dye or how to do branding. So it's about sharing the resources. We also do one-on-one mentoring with our members, in-market research where we take people to South Africa, for example, so they can do research, and then one-on-one coaching. Next slide. But our strongest arm is definitely trade. We believe that members should be earning while they are learning. So market linkages is one of our most important aspects. Next slide. We used to do trade shows, and again, we did it as a group. You can see in this image here, this is one stand where we had 7 of our members all displaying together. But trade shows are expensive. American trade shows are incredibly expensive. And you also have to go to a trade show at least 4 times before the buyers will start taking an interest in you and starting to order. So what we decided to do is we changed it up and we decided to start bringing the buyers to Eswatini. Next slide. We've had 8 inward buyer missions over the last 5 years. And during that time, we've been able to bring in orders of 5.3 million South African Rand for our members. The advantages to having inward buyer missions are the cost. It is far more cost effective to bring buyers to your country than for your suppliers to go somewhere else. Also, by bringing buyers into your country, they get to meet people one-on-one. They get to walk around people's workshops. They get to make relationships and have a real understanding of your organization, which you can't really get at a trade show. Next slide. So this is one of our Australian buyers. And what we try and do is we're very careful to link the buyer to the right supplier. We do that through asking a lot of questions. And Prue here from Australia was very interested in working with rural women. So this is the Manzini satellite bus rank in Eswatini, where Prue met these ladies, and she placed an order of almost 40,000 emalangeni or rand with them. And you can see everyone is pretty happy with that day. Next slide. This is another example of how to work as a collective. This is the Smithsonian Museum of African Art in Washington, DC. And in the front window are 3 SWIFT members. There's Ngwenya Glass, Swazi Candles, and Gone Rural. And it's a beautiful store, and it's visited by millions of visitors every single year. Next slide. Now we're going to have a look at some of the design and color trends for 2020, 2021. We're going to look at spring, summer, and then autumn and winter. Next slide. The trends in home decor and design, there's a number of trends emerging, but the 3 strongest ones are this natural luxury, the country chic, and then the mixing of patterns. Next slide. This is the first one, and as you can see, it's a mixture of patterns. There's lots going on, but somehow it's all working. And we'll see this particular trend is also going into accessories and into clothing. Next slide. This is country chic. And again, it's a mixture of things, but the colors are quite quiet. But it's still a high-end look, but it's also got a little bit of natural to it as well. Next slide. Then we have natural luxury. And again, it's about natural fibers, natural colors, bringing the outside into the home. Next slide. This is a bathroom. Again, it's those colors and it's bringing nature in. Next slide. The main color for 2021 is aqua. So this is a blue, a green, turquoise. So this is the main color chosen by Pantone for 2021. Next slide. And then clothing. Clothing for spring, summer is very bright. As you can see, it's the yellows, the purple, the blue, like a muted red. So it's very vibrant. And then into autumn. Next slide. This is where it's going a bit warmer. So it's like the beiges and the browns and the rust colors. Next slide. For jewelry, again, you can see this mixed pattern is coming back in for accessories, shawls and scarves. Again, different colors for the 2 seasons, but the jewelry trend for next year is going a bit more bold with stronger designs and thicker, bigger pieces. Next slide. Now, consumer trends. One of the things we always have to remember as suppliers is we have 2 buyers. We have the business buyer who will be buying products from us, but then we have consumers. So it's always really important to look at what the trends are with your consumers, the end person buying your product. And what's coming out for next year is people are looking, they have a focus on this handmade. They want to connect with the maker, and they are actively seeking out companies and artists with a product that has a story and a product that has a point of view. So people are moving into more ethical, and they want to make a personal choice when they're spending their income. Next slide. Then sustainability. We know that global warming is a reality. we know that we've been damaging our environment. So society is looking for more eco-friendly lifestyles, and our consumers are more ecologically conscious than they have ever been. So these feed into those design trends that we were looking at, I'm sure, a few minutes ago, the natural. That's what people are looking for. People are looking to be more conscious of how they spend their money. Next slide. The markets. So the global handcraft market between 2018 and 2023 is reaching a value of 526 billion US dollars. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And that shows all of us, especially in our continent, that that's what people are looking for. They're looking to connect to the stories. They're looking for the natural products. So we are very well situated to take advantage of this global market. Next slide. These are some of the brands that we work with at Swift, but these brands work in Africa. So we have Cost Plus, we have Home Goods, Serve, Global Goods Partners, and Global Girlfriends. Next slide. This is one of the HomeSense outlets in the USA. And as you can see, they are absolutely on trend. Look at all those beautiful patterns they have in their store. Next slide. This is Home Goods. And again, they're on trend again. That's the country chic look. Home Goods have 716 stores within their group, the TJ Maxx group. Next slide. World Market, Cost Plus. This organization has 276 stores across the USA. Next slide. 10,000 Villages, who are the reason that Fair Trade exists today. They were the first fair traders way back in the late 50s. They started working with female artisans in South America. 10,000 Villages have over 100 stores across America. Next slide. So one of the most important things when going into any new market is research. Research, more research, looking, asking questions, more research, so that you have a plan to go into your market. So the first thing you do is you're looking at the size and the scope of the market. We're looking at trends and opportunities, at other buyers and other suppliers who are selling into America, your consumers, and your pricing. I can't stress enough how important research is. The other thing that's very, very important is understanding the regulatory environment, understanding how AGOA works, understanding food safety requirements or labeling requirements, packaging requirements. So you don't suddenly find a buyer and then realize, oh, well, you don't fit those standards. The other thing then you start doing is identifying your buyers. And you can do that through Google. The internet exists, it's there, it's most helpful. But also speak to your embassy in country who can help you. Speak to your own trade promotion units who also have all of this information available. But the research is so important. Understanding your own proposition, what are you going to offer to that market? Understanding your own brand. And then look at the market, get the information. I can't stress how important that is. Next slide. With buyers, this is your wholesaler or your distributor. You've got to find out what it is that your customer is interested in. Do they want samples? If so, what kind of samples? Who's going to pay for those samples? Do they need a visit to your workshop? Is there a testing period? I found once years ago, it was about 15 years ago, we worked with a buyer and they had to test all of our samples. So we had to send them all to South Africa for testing. And if we didn't know that before we had met the buyer, that would have affected our pricing because it's expensive to get things tested. Then is this a trial order? Is this a one-off? What does my costing look like? Does the buyer need exclusivity? So sometimes it's good to have exclusivity with a distributor, for example. But if you do that, then you have to set a sales limit. So if someone says to you, I want to be your distributor and I want to be exclusive, only I will sell your products. You have to make sure to figure out what is that worth to your company. Yes, you can give distribution rights, but they have to meet a certain sales target. So you have to be careful with that and then look at the cost implications for your organization. Next slide. One thing that we sometimes get wrong as suppliers is when we meet a buyer for the first time, we're so eager to tell them about our organization and our products and what we do that we forget to ask the questions. We did a very good training a few years ago about offering the best fit benefit. And that means asking the buyer questions. Once you ask them again and ask them again, ask them again, you'll have a more thorough understanding of the buyer. You are then able to offer the best fit benefit from your company that your buyer requires. Next slide. And then brand values. All of us need to understand our own brand values and then find out more about our US buyer or our South African buyer and make sure that we align our brands. So understanding what is your brand, what does it stand for, and what you want to be known for. Next slide. And then consumer criteria. We're back to understanding your end customer. So do research on how old is your target consumer? What's their economic position? What are their values? So the more you understand about your end customer, the easier it is for you to reach that customer with the right messaging, whether it's on social media, whether it's on your websites, or even on your product label. So it's not just the buyers you need information on, you also need your information on your end buyer. Next slide. Thank you. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it was informative, and if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thanks very much, Julie. What we'll do is we will go on to the next session where Julia will take us through the interaction section, and then we can then have the questions. People can ask questions as we are going through that session on both to both Julia and Julie. Julia?
Okay, can you hear me or see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Morning, everyone. My name's Julia Wilson, and I'm based in Durban in South Africa. And Julie has discussed quite a lot of the issues surrounding buyers and presentations to buyers and product. So there is quite a link between Julie and I, because we do a very similar style of job, except Julie really works on the side of the vendors, organizing vendors and helping vendors. I represent the buyers, and I represent buyers from one particular organization in majority, the TJX Corporation. They are mainly based in America, but they also have stores in the UK and in Europe, in the EU. One of the biggest groups within the TJX Corp is Home Goods and Home Sense, and Julie had slides of both of those stores on in her presentation, and they have been traditionally big buyers of products from Africa over many years, probably coming up to about 20 to 25 years. So they've been very, very big supporters of Africa. And we buy from countries, Kenya, we buy from Tanzania, we buy from South Africa, Swaziland, Zambia, Botswana, and all over sub-Saharan Africa, really. Julie alluded to certain aspects in her presentation that I just want to pick up on because it is very important. We try to encourage the buyers to come to Africa at least once a year. As you can imagine, it's a very expensive trip. And so when we're planning a trip for a buyer to come to Southern Africa, we try to fit in as many countries and as many vendors as we possibly can to give them a full overview of all the products that we hope that they're going to like. So back in February, just before this dreadful COVID virus started spreading through the world, we were lucky enough to have a buyer from Home Goods in Southern Africa. And we went into Swaziland just for the day. We flew in very early in the morning on that early morning flight from Johannesburg. And we spent the day with Julie and all the Swazi vendors. And it was the first time our buyer, David, had been into Swaziland, and he absolutely loved it. So I just want to reinforce what Julie has just said, actually, that getting the buyers to be with what we call the vendors, i.e. the manufacturers, the producers of the product, is so very, very important, particularly in home environments, if you like, so that not only did he get to see a lot of product being made by the talented artisans, but he also got a feel for Eswatini and the people and the culture, and that really helps him understand the product and be able to go back home to America and relate to the product and relay the importance of the product in his event to his colleagues and his management, etc., etc. So that day was quite a hectic day. We saw I think 8 or 9 vendors during the day in Swaziland, which when you think you're talking to everybody, we're looking at gorgeous products. We are chatting to people about terms and conditions and this and that, and the buyer is choosing. And then we flew out that evening back through South Africa and actually down to Cape Town because the timing of this trip was really tight. We placed with 7 of the 8 vendors that we saw in Swaziland. So that was such a positive result for us. And hopefully it's going to lead to bigger and better orders going forward. And I know Julie showed lots of lovely slides in her presentation. I'm afraid I don't have slides, but this is one of the gorgeous baskets from Gone Rural in Swaziland that we were able to purchase, and Home Goods have purchased them for many years in different colorways and patterns. So these are very, very popular with the Home Goods customer. I also just want to say, one of the fantastic things that we've got going for us in Africa is that Africa never goes out of fashion. And Julie alluded to the fact that, you know, there are lots of trends that go on around the world, and sometimes you wonder who on earth puts these trends together. But trends of sort of African style products, and of course with cheetah and zebra skin colorways and this type of thing, animal prints, they seem to be always in fashion at the moment. But I think the other thing is that the products that are made in Africa, the handmade products, are one of a kind. They showcase the talents of amazing artisans. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me as a buyer's agent what beautiful products are made. And of course, just being able to watch the product being made and seeing something come to life, and the story behind the product is really, really important to us and the buyers. And as Julie was talking about, the end customer, the person that goes into the stores and buys the product, they love to read a little hand tag that says who it was made by, where it was made, how it was made, if there's anything you know, really sort of special about the product and everything. Our end customer loves to read that. So we'll chat about that a little later on. But I think also I've been very lucky because the buying group that I work for, the TGX Corp, have had such an appreciation of African art over the years, and the buyers that we've been lucky enough to work with have really, really championed African art, and I think that's been shown in the fact that they come back year after year after year. And sometimes during the year as well, we're able to add in additional orders, say like for Christmas or whatever. So, you know, it really does show that the consumer, their consumer has a huge appreciation. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm really, I kind of think of myself almost as a facilitator. So whereas Julie, as I said, works with all the vendors and really, really helps them, I work with the vendors, but I also work for the buyer. So I'm the one that comes to Julie and will say, right, Julie, this is what the buyers are going to be looking for in the next year. And Julie will then say, oh, we've got a great vendor making this or whatever. So I do a lot of sourcing. I'm always on the lookout for new product, and that is really, really important, because very often we may not be in touch with a vendor for 2 or 3 months, but during that time they're making new items, or they're taking an existing item and doing something different with it. So a basket may have lace added onto it, or some beading, or some sequins. A carving may have some embellishment on it and everything. And if you don't tell me, then I don't know. So it's really, really important, the communication with somebody like me. It just has to be a quick email with some photos, and you know, obviously it has to be detailed, because if you send me an email with a photo, I kind of go, okay, what's that? Whereas you know, I really, really encourage vendors to provide a lot of information, what it is, how it's been made, the materials you've used, and then if you can give me kind of like a size indication, and then a price, what your kind of US dollar price would be. And this would be really important, so that I can see in my head what it is. I've got lots of experience in looking at product we've bought over the years, so I can kind of say, yeah, that would work, price, the size and the price kind of go together. I think the buyers would like this, and then I can present that to the buyers. So it's very difficult for me to get a photo of something and not, you know, if I'm sitting in Durban and you're in Swaziland, I can't always gauge the price and the size. So sometimes it's good to send me a picture of a basket and put a water bottle next to it or something, so that I can come see what it looks like in relation to something that I'm familiar with. And then I can, you know, it gives me a good idea. And I think, you know, all of us, as we go through the next 12 to 18 months to 2 years, it's going to be especially important. You know, we're all coping in our own ways around the world with the virus, the fact that people aren't traveling, and communication is done like this now on Zoom. And I communicate with the buyers on Zoom, and it's so to have lots of information given to us on a product, it's really, really important. Otherwise you're going to go backwards and forwards saying, oh, what is it, what's the size, what's this, you know. So if you're kind of very prepared, and you can have all the information next door to a photo. In fact, if you've got product to show me, I can actually send you a sheet of what we call a photo quote sheet. You can put a photo, and then you can put product description next to it, and then it's much easier for both of us, because then we know exactly what we've told each other. Julie mentioned in her presentation communication. It is so important. You know, if you have any questions, any issues, any doubts, any concerns, anything really exciting to tell us, you know, communication is huge. And a one-line email is all it takes to say, well, you know, which shipping port am I shipping out of? Who's paying for samples? That was one of the things that Julie, you know, suggested. These are things that we all need to be aware up front, because if you negotiate a price and then you're suddenly confronted with having to send samples to America, that can be a seriously expensive exercise, and you need to be able to quote prices with all these expenses in, because the price that you're giving us is not just for the product, it's for everything else that goes on. It's for the packaging, it's for the boxes, it's for moving the goods down to a port, it's for your FOB charges. So when I work with a new vendor, I do a vendor orientation, which I send quite a long email out to a vendor with a lot of listed 1 to 20 of expectations, what we are expecting, what the buyer expects, and everything, and then encourage you to ask any questions before you commit to anything. That's really, really important. And I know Julie alluded to that getting all your facts straight, understanding what's expected of you is very, very key. And another thing is that, you know, often we've placed orders with manufacturers that halfway through the order process, they've hit a problem, hit a snag, and maybe are not able to deliver all the units ordered, or there's an issue that means that you can't deliver exactly what we ordered. Again, that is communication. So you can't deliver all of them, but what can you deliver? Is there a solution to this? If we ordered 1,000 of these baskets, but your ladies have delivered this basket but in a different color, you know, it's not the end of the world. If you communicate with me and say, look, out of 1,000 I've got 200 in this color, but the other 800 are in blue, send me a photo of the blue one and I'll go to the buyer to see if we can get that accepted. So it's like sort of finding solutions to problems as well, and working hand in hand with somebody like me who's the agent. And the reason why buyers have agents like me, by the way, is that they are in America. So the time zone is completely different to us in Africa. And they are often dealing with maybe 1,000 manufacturers at one go. So if they get emails from 1,000 manufacturers, they'd never be able to work. So they employ people like me, and I coordinate all the African vendors. So you all come to me, and I am the one that then communicates. So he gets emails from one source, which is me, and it's much easier for them, for the information flow, and to make sure that everything is sorted out as to how they need it. Another, I mean, it's the preparation for exporting is quite big. Everybody, I've met a lot of vendors along the way in my 20 or 30 years of working in Africa, and some vendors come along and they've got some fantastic product, and we would love to buy it, but unfortunately, unless you've got finance in place, stores like Home Goods and Home Sense can't buy. There are some smaller retailers that can and will be able to give a deposit and or to help finance orders, but unfortunately the bigger ones like Home Goods and Home Sense, we can't do that. they are a retailer. They're not a bank. And so if they were to finance you, they would have to finance all their 5,000 suppliers, which it just would be inconceivable. They just absolutely couldn't do it. So if you're looking to deal with bigger retailers such as ourselves, you have to make sure that you have finance from either an export organization in your country, or you have been able to have finance from banks. And you must build the cost of that into your price so that you can pay those loans back or that finance back at the end of the order. And that's really very key, because unfortunately without that provision in place, we can't really go forward. There has to be a big degree of flexibility as well. Unfortunately, we've really tested that in this very uncertain time with COVID-19. You can imagine that all the stores worldwide, and I know obviously South Africa, and I'm sure in Swaziland and other countries, all the retailers have closed, and they've been closed for 3 months. And that has been enormous in terms of they've got 3 months of stocks now in warehouses and in their stores that have been building up over the last 3 months. And now they've got to try and sell that in a very short period of time. And we tend to think, oh, well, it's Woolworths, or it's Mr. Price, or whatever. They've got loads of money and all the rest of it. But they've had massive overheads during these last few months of lockdown that they still have to pay their landlords and their banks and everything else. So everybody is looking for a bit of flexibility now, from suppliers to logistics people and everything, to help try and get over the next few months. We've unfortunately had to put all our orders on a hold basis, and we've just started unlocking those now, and we are taking them in for different selling. But there are unfortunately a few terms and conditions that we've had to ask vendors to help us with, so that we can try and get back on track very quickly. So flexibility is also really, really important. And I just think that I can't stress enough communication, that it's really, really important that we all communicate. And, you know, we have to trust each other. If we're going to do business, you have to trust each other and chat about fears and concerns and all the rest of that. Having said that, the products that we've purchased from Africa over the last 20 years have been amazing. We continue to look for new products all the time. And I would really, really encourage you to put together a presentation, maybe a slideshow, or just really great photos of your products. And I'd love to see anything new. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Julia, for I think very valuable information for the exporters. And also thanks, Julie, for guiding us on what we should be paying attention to, and the things that as exporters we should be looking at. I think we now have reached the stage where we need to then just have the questions from the participants to get clarification on some of the things that you might not be clear on, and other things that you might actually want to really get Julie or Julia to share with you. I'll start the ball rolling by just asking Julia, I guess from your experience, what are some of the things that you would say buyers, both from South Africa and the US, really look out for, and that you would want to share with the participants here?
I'll tell you what I find really useful, and and that is being able to go to local gift shops in South Africa. So we go to a lot of the tourist gift shops, and we see a lot of new product there. Obviously, there's a lot of gift shops in the airports, which are an invaluable source of product sourcing for us. I mean, as a company, we buy ceramics, we buy baskets, we buy wooden carvings, we buy lots of cushion covers. Actually, just going back to the pictures that Julie showed in her presentation, you could, I mean, anything in the room sets that you saw, apart from lighting. Lighting is really difficult for us because they have different lighting connections in America, and there's lots of testing that has to be done, and that gets really expensive, so we don't touch lighting. But lots of throws and cushions and wall hangings and carvings and bowls, and goodness, this year we've bought some papier-mâché products, painted, highly decorative. So we're looking for anything and everything that's decorative. So, you know, boxes, we buy a lot of soapstone. I mean, gorgeous baskets from Zambia, from Senegal, from Kenya. Really, and of course, I showed you the baskets from Swazi. So we're just looking for new things all the time. And some of the product is just so beautiful. Most of the product is beautiful. We buy bags, actually, handbags, shopping bags, anything decorative.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the participants? Anyone who is a question?
Hi, I'd just like to know how we could get hold of you, Julia, so that we could present products to you.
Yeah, what I'll do at the end of this, actually, Julie Nixon does have all my details, and so I'm sure she can provide them to the group. If you're interested in showing me the types of products you do, if you just send me an email, I will send you what I call a photo quote sheet, which is exactly as it says. It's a photo quote. So you put a photo of the product in a box, and then you tell me what it is and how it, you know, what materials they are, the size of it is very important, and then a kind of price indication, and then that gives me an idea of whether you're, because we buy so much, I've usually got something I can compare it with, and you know, I can come back to you and say, listen, product looks absolutely great, however we would normally pay this sort of price for it, and also I can give you all our terms and conditions and everything, so you can see what's really important to us you have to include into your pricing. And everything. Obviously, I don't want to harp on about what a setback the whole pandemic has been, because I think it's been a terrible setback for everybody in every business, and sadly health-wise for many people around the world. But we've lost a year, and you know, that's really the basic truth of what's happened, and we're hoping to claw back now so that we can get working again for next year, because unfortunately if we don't do something about the world economy, we're going to have other big issues on our hands as well. So we're not buying anything at the moment. What we're trying to do is work with our current vendors on products that we'd already seen and hope to buy earlier on in the year, but certainly for next year, you know, we'll be looking for new products and everything. So I'd be really interested to see what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. If I could just suggest that if you have a question, you can just raise your hand, or you can put the questions in the chat box, and we'll be able to field your questions to either Julie or Julia. Also, I wanted to say that I'm sure you all registered to attend this webinar, and we will share both Julia and Julie's contacts with all the registered, well, every one of you, since you registered. And we can also, as the hub, continue to be the link between you and Julie and Julia. You can get in touch with any one of us. In Eswatini, there is Tammy, who is actually our country rep for Eswatini. In Lesotho, we have Marina, who is the country rep for Lesotho. In Malawi, we have Doug. Botswana, you can get in touch with Cosmas directly, or we do have Harriet, who is also based in Botswana. We can actually share those details with all the members so that you know who is in the country that you are based in. I know there are exporters or producers from Zambia. We do have Kevin and Peter in Zambia. So we will be able to provide that information to you. Okay. We do have a question from, let me see how many questions we have and who should
there
start
are two hands that are raised, George.
Okay.
It's Masopa Mshoshwe and Emmanuel Chibesa-Kunda.
Thanks very much, Golden. Can we start with Masopa? Mr. Masopa.
Thanks, George. My name is Masopa from Lesotho. My question I'll read directly mostly to Julia in Durban. For the sake of time, I cannot go for Julia in Lesotho. Julia, you said you buy everything except nothing, and then the good part you tell us you buy bags. So I want to know the minimum order that you made in the last order, or an average on bags, how much it is. The second question is, can you share what you told us about the expectation of the buyers, that you were talking about? If you can just share with us about that list so that we can have an idea what the kind of the expectations of the buyers from US. The third question, you talked about financing if we are going for the big retailer. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of financing that maybe that we may need, or what do you try to basically, can you elaborate on that one? The last question is going to the hub. After this meeting and after the presentation, we just want to know the hub, what the way forward for us, so that we cannot just be coming for this kind of forum and then not taking home what we're supposed to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, just repeat the first question, would you, please?
In terms of the bags that you said they're looking for the bags, what is the minimum quantities or the average quantity that you normally order?
That's honestly a difficult question to answer because it depends very much on the bag. I mean, we buy bags from Ghana, so they are the hand-woven bulgur bags, what they call a bulgur bag, and you know, we could buy 2,000 or 3,000 of those, even more in a shipment. We do try to work on filling containers so that we have a lot of efficiency in terms of shipping and movement of product, because logistics from Africa, unfortunately, well, actually from a lot of parts of the world now, you know, cost of shipping is hugely high. So we try to work with our vendors to minimize those costs as much as possible. So it's very, very difficult to, you know, if there is a trend in bags, we'll buy more. If they're just like a small decorative item that will look nice in an African event that we're doing or something, then it might be maybe less. I'd have to see the bag or a picture of the bag, and that will give me kind of some indication. Obviously, you know, there's no beating about the bush. Price is obviously of big importance to all buyers, whatever they're buying and wherever they're from. They have to make sure that they can sell the item at the other end at a profit, otherwise they're not going to be in business. And most buyers will have a percentage profit that they need to reach in order to make that product viable in their stores. So they have to add in the cost of shipping, the cost of moving the goods across the states from the port into their warehouses and then ultimately into their stores. And then they have a margin that they have to add. And very often they start with what their selling price should be on that product, and they work it backwards. So they can tell you what kind of price they would need to pay for that product. That's now that's for my stores. Now, obviously, there are other stores, and Julie brought up 10,000 Villages, who are an exceptional organisation that only work with fair trade products. But as a consumer, if I were to go into one of the 10,000 Villages into one of their stores, I know I would pay a premium price for a product because I'd be able to trace that product really all the way back to absolutely where it's made, and in some cases to even the person that made it. Now, the stores I work for are like department stores, so unfortunately we're not able to have a representative in the store explaining to the customer how this was made and where it's come from. So we rely on you as the vendor to put a really nice hand tag on the product to tell the consumer what it's all about, and you're able to put your website and email address so that a consumer. So one of the things Home Goods really encourages is for you to promote your product. So it doesn't go in under a Home Goods label or anything. It goes under your label with your website, your email address, and everything. And we get lots of consumers buying a Gone Rural basket in somewhere in America, and they contact Gone Rural directly and say, we love your basket, we can't find another one in Home Goods, can we buy it from you directly, or whatever. You can see on the back of the Gone Rural. So this is a lovely tag. Inside the tag it explains everything about the basket, and then on the back is the website. I don't know whether anyone can see that, but there's a website address and everything, and it says a member of the World Fair Trade Organization. So a tag would be to promote your product and everything. So very difficult to say how many a buyer would buy. Depends at the time what they're. But we address that as we're kind of in negotiation. We say, listen, give us a price for 100, give us a price for 500, give us a price for 1,000. So.
Okay.
Question two.
Okay. Go on, Julie.
No, I was just going to ask you what question two was. Was that to me or to Julie?
Question two, it was directly to you, because you said you normally advise your customers about the expectation from the buyers, and you send them that list. Is the one that I was asking, if you can require, I'm requesting for that one, if you can share with us so that we can have an idea.
Okay, well, you know, if you're dealing with a large retailer such as us, or many of the other large retailers in the world, they will have their own website, and they will ask you as the vendor to go in and ask you to read maybe 100 pages of expectations, which is you know, obviously a big commitment on your part, particularly if you don't know if you're going to get an order from them. So what I try to do right at the very beginning is, if you're going to present product to a buyer, I will send you a list, and it's quite a detailed email containing very, very pertinent points, i.e. the main points that I would say to cost in. So for instance, I would ask you to cost in, we only use export packaging. We're not allowed to use recycled at the moment. You have to package your products really, really well. I mean, if we're buying a ceramic dish and it arrives there broken, then that tells us that you probably haven't packaged it well, or not well enough for to get dropped or whatever. So we really ask you to look at your product and package it accordingly for export. That we ask you to supply the samples free of charge, but we pay for the shipping of the samples. So all these things have a big bearing on your cost, and have a big bearing on how you may want to do business with us. So we lots of interference. Anyone here? Okay, so I tried to.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so at the beginning, I tried to list a lot of expectations on an email and ask you to read it very carefully and confirm to me you've read it, so that I know that you've got a really good understanding of what we want. Now, I put at the bottom that these are not all the expectations. There may be a few more in the manual, but these are the main ones. So, and they're the ones that I would kind of like ask you to really think about when you're doing your costing for us. So that's what I do, because I know it can be very intimidating to have to look at sort of 60 pages of you know, a retailer's manual. It's large.
Thanks very much. We do have a few other questions, and I will actually just read them out to you, and then either Julie or Julia, you can actually respond to the questions.
I think Julie should respond to a few, because there's such a similar kind of role to me, and I'm sure she's got a lot to add to this.
Okay. Anna has a question on, would it be possible to share the document that you have been referring to right now?
Well, I think the thing to do would be if you fill out a photo quote for me to start with, so that I can see whether your product or products would be relevant to us. Then you know, if it was something that we felt we would be interested in going forward, then certainly I would share the document. But at this point, I think the best thing to do is let's see whether the product would be relevant to us.
Thank you very much. The next question is, can you advise on contacts, recommendations for getting products into South Africa airport shops?
No, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know. I don't know them.
I think what I'm not sure which who asked this question, but if you don't mind, you can get in touch with the hub, and we can try and see if we'll be able to link you up with any contact that can be able to help in that area. I also suggest that my hub colleagues, the country reps and the portfolio managers, if you could put your contacts in the chat box for the participants so that they can be able to contact you. Isaac, you asked about what benefits are they exporting to South Africa via AGOA. I can answer this one. The African Growth and Opportunity Act is mainly for the US market. So if you are going to be exporting into South Africa, the AGOA trade preference program won't benefit you. But there are benefits which are basically duty preference when you export to the US under AGOA. For selected products, and I think most of the handicrafts and accessories are covered under the AGOA program. the next question is there some form of tax relief? I'm not so sure tax relief for you to export to South Africa or the US. Would you want to clarify your question? Who asked this question?
It's Isaac.
Isaac.
Swazi Candles.
Isaac, are you still here? You can unmute and clarify your question.
George, he has just typed to say to export to South Africa.
Okay. Do you know anything, Julia, regarding exporting from Swaziland to South Africa in terms of tax relief?
I'm sure that Julie would be the person to help you with that question. I'm afraid I don't know.
Sure, I can help. What has to happen is you first have to register on the Escuda system, which you can do with the customs here in Eswatini. You also need an export number. So you have to be certified by SRA Customs Department. And then what happens is when you get to the border, you have to pay the VAT in cash. If it is less than 2,000 emalangeni, they will accept your VAT payment in cash. If it is above 2,000, you have to pay on an EFT, a bank transfer.
Thanks very much, Julie. And I urge Isaac to get in touch directly with Julie if that explanation is not very clear.
Sure, no problem.
Julie will be able to assist. Wezi asked a question on looking at quality control. Are there any general quality control guidelines available online that can be followed?
Is that for me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Okay. Right. Well, there are certain quality control criteria that I will pass to vendors depending on the type of product that we purchase. But we have lots of criteria regarding wood products, anything made from wood due to moisture. I think really the quality control on artisan products such as baskets and things is that they are fit for purpose, and they are what we've bought in terms of size and maybe colorway and pattern and whatever. Obviously, we wouldn't accept baskets if they had lots of ends, lots of grasses coming off them or anything like this. You can see how beautiful and clean this is, and it's got this lovely twine tie with a nice decorative button. I mean, it really does look very appealing. So a lot of the quality control on handicraft products such as this is very subjective. But, you know, we work with each individual vendor. We generally would give a sample back to them of exactly what we want and how it needs to look. And the measurements, obviously we know that sometimes with handicraft products, the measurements can be slightly out, but so we do give a range in which is acceptable and everything. So yeah, we are very clear on our expectations, but we know that on you know, the whole beauty of the handmade and everything is that everything's different. Everyone's different.
Thanks very much. On the side of like the US, especially the market entry requirements when it comes to baskets, what are some of the standards that expect or certifications that are required?
Julie, you're a good person to answer that, I'm sure.
Please unmute, Julie.
Hi, sorry about that. You do need a phytosanitary certificate from your Ministry of Agriculture for any natural products. You also need food and hygiene standards from the country where your product will go to. And then the certificate of origin proving where your products have come from. And you normally get a certificate of origin from your customs department in your home country.
Thanks very much, Julie. Emmanuel, you had your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much. As said, my name is Emmanuel Chibizakunda. I'm from Zambia, and coming from the organization called Plant a Million. We work with women groups and produce baskets. And I have two questions. My first question is,
Sorry, Emmanuel, you are very faint. I would like to speak up.
Is it better now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I have two questions. The first one is, can anybody in the network link us up with designers? So the women we're working with basically have the skills to do any color, shape desired. So we had improved, for example, with them shopping baskets. So I'm interested to find in the US any designers, as Julia mentioned earlier. The most important thing is to understand the customers, and us not being in the US, we always will have secondhand information. So the first thing is really, can you link us up with designers in the US who know the customers of home goods inside out and can actually let us know or tell us, or in a joint approach, develop products which will be demanded by the customers. And the second question is looking at the networks in the US to manage the capacity and production volumes on our side. I'm interested in typical volumes, the network of home goods or other networks. How many baskets, for example, shopping baskets, are they turning around on a monthly or yearly basis, so that we manage our supply side and the production capacity. Thank you.
Hi, Emmanuel. Let me answer some of those questions. The first one is designers. We have an incredible network of designers in Africa, and we should be tapping into them because a lot of them have worked on getting products to the US market as it is. So I think it's always best to have African-based designers because they understand the raw materials, they understand what the grass can do, what the palm can do. Rather than North American designers who are not familiar with our raw materials. And we do have amazing designers here. Then with the units, for example, like a home goods order of baskets could be anything up to 6,500 just on one order. So that can give you some kind of sense of how many baskets are being shipped to the Northern Hemisphere. We once had a customer, this was back in 2014, who wanted 500,000 baskets from Africa.
Wow.
I mean, think about that volume. And we had to turn that order down because it would have taken us 18 months working with only one client to deliver one order.
Can I just add to what Julie said as well? I think the whole the whole specialness of Africa is the African design, and you know, one of the things that we don't want to do is to be making products in Africa that they can make in India or China, probably at a lot cheaper prices. So we need to keep you know, we need to keep the African authenticity about it. So that's why the buyers come. I mean, I have bought this year some baskets from Malawi through a guy in Cape Town. They're called Zobzo baskets. Well, he calls them Zobzo baskets. I don't know whether that's a common name for them. But they are essentially a big round, like a log basket, but they've got a huge fringe all the way around them. And they're just so unique. So, you know, I think I absolutely agree with Julie on this, that we really need to encourage everyone to work with African designers to get an African basket, because you can go on the internet and find loads and loads of baskets from all over the world and copy them, but then you're making, you know, a flat basket in Zambia that looks like a flat basket from India, and that's not what we want. We want it has to have an African feel about it, because that's what the buyers want. That's why they're coming to Africa, to buy African products. It's the uniqueness and the talent. And by the way, I was in Zambia, in fact, 2 years ago, or maybe it was even 3 years ago. And it was in July. We went and we met with some amazing ladies who were making fantastic baskets. Some kind of designs that we'd never seen in other countries. Like we'd never seen them in Zimbabwe, we'd never seen them in Swaziland, never seen them in Kenya. So they became very, very unique. And now we're buying those through a guy now in Cape Town. So he's the one that's going up to Zambia. He's placing the orders with the vendors. He's bringing them into Cape Town. So when we place an order through him, he finances it actually. So, and it was a very successful trip into Zambia.
Thanks very much, Julia and Julie. I think there was a similar question on from Subusiso, I think, on the quality. Yes, it's Subusiso, on the standard or how our products from here, particularly baskets, compare to other baskets from other countries, particularly Asia and South America. And I think you did answer that in a way. Again, so if you need more information, Julie is just next door to you there in Eswatini. So you can get in touch with Julie. The other question is on was again related to to Swift. Is it Mahalelio? Wanted to know if Swift can actually be able to work in Mozambique with cooperatives in Mozambique. Would you be able to do that? Julie? Unmute, please, Julie.
We've got a project starting to capacitate other members in Southern Africa. So we definitely would like to work with you in Mozambique. We've already started working with Botswana and Lesotho. Soon to start with Namibia. So absolutely, we would love that.
Thanks very much. The next question. Actually, that question was from Anna from Mozambique. To me, from Botswana. I'm sure, Julie, you have met to me from Botswana, and she has questions for you there. What sort of products have you bought from Botswana, and who are your clients from here as well? We need to engage you because we have unique products in Botswana, which we are seeking market for. Julie?
Yep, I totally agree. You have some beautiful things in Botswana. I especially love your basketry. We've just started the project. It's only about 3 weeks old. So there'll be some more news coming to Botswana from BITC shortly.
Thanks very much. I think this again from Tumi. When you buy, identify the products and the producers' packages for dispatch, where do they ship the goods to? US or to you for consolidation or consolidated shipping? Also, how do you treat issues of intellectual property? Do the products carry the labeling and branding all the way to stores or they get repackaged?
Oh, okay, well, I'll answer that very quickly. When we place orders with our manufacturers, our vendors, we generally ask all vendors to deliver to our freight forwarders. Unfortunately, a lot of African countries, including Eswatini, are landlocked. So it does mean that you have to send your products, like Botswana as well, and several other countries, Zimbabwe, of course, Zambia. You have to move the products down to our freight forwarders in either Durban or Cape Town. So when we're placing the order with you, we'll ask you which port you would like to use, and we buy FOB port, which is free on board port. So you have to deliver the goods to our freight forwarders. They are then consolidated. We generally have a shipping window, so we'd ask you to ship between, or to hand over the goods between the 1st and the 10th of July. Your job would be to get the goods to our freight forwarder between those 2 dates, and the freight forwarder then consolidates the goods into a container, and we ship them to the States. So your costs are up to the FOB point, which is free on board. So you are responsible for all costs over the ship's rail. That's what free on board means. And we would, and in my email that I send out to all the vendors, I urge every vendor to be very, very, very familiar with the INCO terms, INCO freight terms. And those are terms, the international freight terms. So it's not what you might have said, oh yeah, well, we're FOB Botswana. It actually doesn't make sense, free on board Botswana. So people use these freight terms very lightly, when in fact they actually do mean something very serious, because it means very clearly what your responsibility is in terms of costs. So we would ask you as well to package, export packaging. We tell you how to pack. We tell you what to pack in every carton. So it's really easy for you so you know exactly what you have to do. When the goods get down to our freight forwarder, we do a check. So we do what we call an FRI, a final random inspection. So you'd be sending me photos during production anyway of your products, so that I can just make sure that everything's going okay. And then when the goods arrive in our ports, we pull certain boxes and we do an inspection to make sure that the goods, what you tell us is in the carton, is in the carton. And we obviously check the quality randomly, which there should be no issues, because all the expectations are discussed right at the beginning. So we don't expect to find any issues at all in the cartons. And then the goods are loaded by the freight forwarder, shipped to America in the cartons that you dispatch them in from your warehouse, from your facility. And when they get into America, they're unloaded and sent to lots of different warehouses. For instance, the company I work for, TJX Corporation, in total, across all divisions, they've got about 7,000 stores. And so they have lots of warehouses all across America. We call them distribution centers. And you will mark your carton as to which distribution center we're asking you to send it, or it'll go to. It's like putting an address on an envelope, and the goods go to all the distribution centers, and from there they get delivered to the stores in exactly the cartons that you send them from your facility in Zambia or Botswana or Swaziland, wherever you're shipping from. So it's only at that point when they reach the stores that the people in the stores open the cartons, take the product out and put it on the shelves.
George?
That's it.
Sorry, George, could you excuse me for just 2 minutes? I just need to run downstairs.
Hello.
Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, there are a couple of other questions. I think George has dropped off. I see there's a question from Sbusiso from Eswatini Investment Promotion Agents. He says, thank you for the presentation, and let me concur that you have done well for handicraft industry. We have worked with Swift on many projects. I agree, Inward Trade Mission are the best in terms of cost. So that's not a question. They are really appreciating you, Julie.
No, that's
The
nice.
next one is from Tumi. Julia, when you buy, identify the products and the producers' packages for display. Where do you ship the goods? I think you've answered that one.
Yeah, all our shipments from Africa. So whether it's we consolidate in Kenya, and we buy a lot from West Africa as well, from places like Ghana and Senegal. So they leave the main ports in those countries, and we ship to the west coast of America. So sorry, the east coast. Sorry, east coast. We ship to New York. That's our port of exit in New York.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Golden, for bailing me out there. I had lost connection for a second. I'm mindful of the time. We had initially said that we're going to finish at 12:30. It's now 12:44. We still have the wrap up to do. I'm going to take I think I see that people are still here, but we don't want to continue to keep everyone here. So I'll take 2 more questions, then we go on to the next section. There's a question here on Julie's, have you been involved in exporting cosmetics, organic personal care products? Does one need accreditation in terms of ISO before exporting? Would trade and impact Swift to assist in helping reach export market?
Yes, it depends on the country that you're going to be sending your product to. So generally with organic or natural products, your own country has certain regulations of the standard that it should be at. But then your buyer and their country will have a different set of standards. So it goes back to the research. You have to know your market, understand it, understand the regulations and the rules of export for your target market.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Julie.
and I totally agree with that. That if you're wanting, I mean, any product that you're wanting to ship to America, Julie alluded earlier to the phytosanitary requirements for baskets, and also there are lots of requirements for wood products, because in America they're not accepting certain types of wood now. So you really need to be aware and kind of research your product and on what the guidelines are for shipping a certain product into America or into the EU, and what you should obtain in terms of certification and licenses, if you like, to be able to produce certainly any skincare or food. I know has huge criteria. You know, you have to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration and everything before you can even contemplate exporting food into the States. They're very strict. There's very strict guidelines.
Yep.
Thanks very much. One other question is really, I'll just try and summarize this. This is Anna asking about the cost breakdown in terms of percentages along the value chain. And she ends the question by asking, is this accurate for the products you bring to the US with TJX? Maybe what Julie, you can do here is just to explain what are the cost points and how the charges are actually or the costs are actually charged along the value chain for the product?
Okay, the way we buy, and this is not the same for everybody, so different organizations will have different criteria, but the TJX Corporation, we buy our terms of business FOB, free on board, and we only buy in US dollars as well. So that's also something that any prospective exporter needs to be aware of, that very often big organizations want to buy in US dollar currency, or maybe Aussie dollars if they're based in Australia, and everything. So you kind of need to understand these parts of the puzzle, if you like. So you've got the product, you have to cost in the packaging, you have to cost in labeling, any testing that's required. For instance, if we buy candles, the candles have to be tested in a world-renowned testing facility. Luckily, in Johannesburg, we do have Bureau Veritas. And there's a couple of in which you can't candle and have it say Bureau Veritas or whatever. So they do need testing certification from an authoritative body, if you want to put it like that. And then there is obviously moving goods from facility down to our port, which is not have to be costed in. And then once they get to the port, there are costs involved at the freight forwarder's warehouse, because we ask you to pay for everything until the goods get loaded on the ship. So it would be a great idea if people who have never exported before looked at the INCO terms, and if INCO, it's international. I'm sorry, I can't just off the head to remember exactly what INCO stands for, but they are the international, and it's really exercise to print those off so that everyone has a really clear understanding. You know, you say X factory, X works, FOB, we all use them very loosely, but you know, we pin everybody down to really understand FOB. So there's a lot involved in costing. It's not just the product, it's everything else that goes in. Once the goods are on the ship in the Durban or the Port of Cape Town or the Port of Mombasa, wherever it may be, then they become the responsibility of the client, i.e. the client pays to have them shipped. However, if the goods arrive at the other side and they're broken or damaged or something like that, they will ask you, the vendor, why weren't they packed properly? Because we ask you to pack your goods relevant to the type of product. So for instance, obviously anything that's ceramic or breaks easily, glass or ceramic, has to be packed enormously well to prevent any breakages, and a carton has to be filled to the top so that there's no product in that carton. Some important points that are discussed right at the very beginning. So the buyer, or I would always say, well, how would you pack these products, so that we get an understanding of what you would do, and we might ask you to increase packaging, in which case your costs will go up. So, you know, it's that, going back to what I said right at the very beginning of my presentation, communication, and no question is too silly. And I'm sure Julie will confirm.
I agree completely. Questions.
Thanks very much. There's a comment here from Tumi saying that she hopes that Julie, when you go to Botswana next time, you should take Julia with you.
That's done as soon as it's safe to do so.
And just one last one.
I've done a trip together, and it was very useful.
Yep, very.
There is a question from, is it Tonga, asking where we can get information of which products are allowed in the US and Europe. Is there any way where you can point him to or her?
Yes, I suggest that you first contact your own customs department. You can contact your local US embassy, your local trade promotions unit, who will have all of that information for you. You can also Google it. There's a lot of really good internet sites. Maybe we can share that later. I don't have the information on this laptop. Government regulatory government departments on Google, where you can see what can and can't be imported into the USA.
Thanks very much. I know we might not have been able to cover everyone's questions, but time is always jealous, especially when there's a good thing going. I hope that you found the discussion worth your while. But we have to move on and move on to the the last two sections of this webinar. And before I hand over to Sim, my colleague, to do that, I want to take this opportunity to thank Julie and Julia for the presentations. And I think I'm actually saying this also on behalf of most of the participants here. I see there's a lot of that feedback saying that they found it most people found this very worthwhile, and would like to thank you for sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
I hope that we will be able to do this again. And like I said, please feel free to get in touch with Julia directly and Julie, but again, you can still be able to contact them through us. A lot of my colleagues, if not all of them, have actually put in their contacts here, and I'm sure you have taken note of those. Let me hand over to Sim to guide us through the next steps and concluding remarks. Sim?
Thank you very much, George. And I'd really like to echo George's sentiments. Thank you so much to the presenters, Julie and Jules. That's a new one that I picked up today. And also to the participants, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, with 2 hours of your time with us. So in the interest of time, I'd really like to maybe get into the nuts and bolts in terms of what we are planning to do going forward, so that we can make this make it possible for us to actually achieve our exports, which are our key objectives. I know one of the questions there was, what does the hub do going forward? It's all nice to talk about it. Maybe the good question is, so what? And so the so what bit is, we're having a collaboration with SWIFT. It's been on for years. And we're actually looking to use the expertise to ensure that we achieve our objectives, which is exports to the US and South Africa. So what is currently taking place at the moment as we speak is we're doing what you call a regional supplier survey, where we're trying to figure out the stakeholders within the region, who is actually doing what product. I think the most important thing we picked up from the conversation is that you've got to have the right product so that you can target the right market. So we are currently doing that through our colleagues in the different countries. I think the details are there. So we've got a tool that we're trying to work through to make sure that we actually find out who's producing what product and where we can actually promote it to. And in the same process, SWIFT are also looking to link buyers with the suppliers that we identify. So it's very important, again, to make sure that whichever buyers we get should actually be able to be interested in the product that we're producing. So that's happening at the moment. And the other idea is that we ensure that all the sampling that's done is actually submitted to the buyers, and that's through SWIFT. So these are all processes that are actually being done at the moment to ensure that we achieve the exports that we're hoping to do. So it's really not a talk show. We really need to make things happen. So for those of us that do not have enough information in terms of what we're looking for on our survey, please reach out to our colleagues and ensure that you don't miss out on the opportunity that we currently trying to create for our regional suppliers. And then just broadly speaking, I think it's important to know that we're facing challenges obviously with COVID, and we do most of these activities virtually. We know the challenges. I know the first time because I experienced a lot of challenges myself. But it's very, very exciting to see a lot of people actually coming on board to actually listen to these virtual platforms. It's encouraging. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult, but I believe if we work together, the hub and the participants and all the experts in the markets, we can go far. I mean, the market is 600 billion rands, $600 billion. If we can just get 10% of that, it's a lot. So my appeal is that we work together, and whenever we believe that we need to talk to each other, let's talk to each other. The hub is there. Everybody is willing to talk to you, and we're actually willing to learn from you as well. So in the interest of time, it's 1 o'clock now. I think I'd like to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and we're looking forward to talking more, God willing. And thank you so much for your time, and we're looking forward to talking to you again next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.